In the previous video, I had tried explaining you about built-in exceptions, and I hope that you are now familiar with the term exception. A programmer might not be only dependent on built-in exceptions, which are limited, but he or she can also create customized exceptions to suit one's requirements. These are also called as user-defined exceptions. Each time an error is detected in a program, the Python interpreter raises or throws an exception. Then, exception handlers are executed depending on the type of exception. We have two choices to forcefully raise these exceptions using assert and raise statements, which we will learn about shortly. Remember, after an exception is raised, all the statements in its block or indentation are terminated because the interpreter directly goes to execute the exception handler code. This does mean that once a error is occurred, all the other code in the same block will be terminated. The raise statement. As discussed previously, the raise statement can be used to throw an exception. I request you to refer the syntax of raise statement on your screen. The syntax of raise statement is raise a space, the name of exception which you wanna throw on your user, and inside the parenthesis you write the message which you want to show to the user along with the error. This message is optional and is generally a string that is displayed when exception is raised. As you can see in the example error on your screen, Python also displays a stack traceback called structured block, which contains information about the sequence of function calls that have been made in the branch of execution of the code. The assert statement, it is also similar to the raise statement, but it throws an exception only when the statement that we provide is false. We can tell that an assert statement in Python is used to test an expression in the program code. As I said before, if the result after testing comes false, then the exception is raised. This statement is generally used in the beginning of a function or after a function call to check for valid input. Syntax of this is really very simple, which you can see on your screen. That is assert and without any space, open a parenthesis if you want, write an expression, close the parenthesis, and after a comma, write your optional message. Guys, there is a kind request for you. Please try to find the difference between an expression and a statement. Coming back to assert statement, Python first evaluates the expression provided. If this is false, an assertion error is raised and the provided argument is displayed. So let us now try to understand the use case of assert and raise statements by writing and executing free programs. So guys, before directly trying to run our code in IDLE itself, let us first try to understand the use of raise and assert and how to use it through an example given in our textbook. Here you can see the first example where they are trying to use the raise statement, and the code they have written is raise keyword, and they have the exception name is exception itself, and they have given an optional argument which says oops, an exception has occurred. So when they try to run this code, they have got this traceback object which specifies here the file location from which this exception was raised and the exact line, and this is the exact line from which the exception was occurred. And this line of code gives us the result of this thing, which says that exception, oops, an exception has occurred, which was the optional argument given by us. So coming to our second example, here they have used if else statement. This helps to show us an index error. So let us try to know what they have actually tried to do is first they have created a list and have assigned the values of 40, 50, 60 and 70 to that list. They have given the value of 10 to our variable length, and later on they have written an if statement here which tells us that length greater than length of numbers. So here, this length is nothing but this, which tells us, which gives the value of 10, and here the actual length of numbers is this thing, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. As we all know, obviously 10 is greater than 4. Inside the if block, what they have tried to do is they have simply raised an index error by using the term raise and giving the exception name as index error. In the further steps, they have tried to print no execution, but as we all know, when an exception is occurred, the further lines or the further code in the same block will be terminated, as we have learnt before. In the other case, if the length, which was 10, was not actually greater than the length of the numbers list, the length, which is 10, the value 10 would have been printed. But let us now focus on this traceback object, which we have got after running our code, which first obviously gives us the location, and which simply says index error. And this index error comes from this. So guys, this is a really good example for making you understand the use of array statement. So here we are writing a program which uses array function or array statement to throw an value error. Here in the first line of this code, I'm trying to ask the user what is your age in terms of an input, and I'm trying to store this value inside our variable age. Later, I have given here an if statement, and in this if statement, I have tried to ask it age dot is alpha. So guys, is alpha is a function which returns true if the given value is in alphabetic terms, and it returns false if the value is not in alphabetic terms. So here, if the user has given the value of age in terms of strings, this will return true, and this code will run. Here we will raise a value error, and we will tell them that it is an inappropriate value for age. But if the user has given their age in terms of numbers, then this part of code will be executed. It will just say your age is age. So let us try to run this code. It is asking me what is your age. Suppose the user has given their age in terms of alphabetic value. Here you can see an exception occurred which we have raised or which we have thrown, which is value error inappropriate value for age, which we have given here. In other case, if the user has given his age in terms of numbers itself, it will simply give us the result of 65 here. This was a simple example for you to understand. So guys, let us now try to learn about the usage of assert statement. As I've already learned before, assert statement is used to test an expression, and if the expression after testing comes false, then the exception is raised. And we have already learned that this statement is generally used in the beginning of a function. So now, here in this example, as you can see, they have used a function called negative check, which takes the parameter of number. And here we are using finally our assert statement. As per the syntax, we have used assert, and then this is our expression what we will be using, or this this is an expression which will be evaluated before raising or before throwing an error, where it is that only if the number is greater than or equal to 0. Guys, remember, this does mean here that if this comes false, if this expression evaluates to false, then only this statement or this exception will be raised. So Here they have used that if the number is greater than or equal to 0, it will run as it is. But if it is not, then an exception is raised, and along with an exception, this optional argument, which is the message which will be given to the user, will be displayed. Finally, the number which will be given as an argument will take here, and finally it will be squared and the result will be printed. So let me clean this part. Yeah. Finally, we have called this function two times, first time and second time. First time we are trying with the number 100, and as you can see in the above statement, 100 is actually greater than 0. So this code will not work here. But this code will work, and the result of this you can see here. So the next call option we have used the number minus 350, which is actually false. So here the exception will be raised with this argument, and as a result you can see this thing here, which results to none first, but later on it gives us this big traceback structure object where we have the location of the error, and later on here is the actual exception which says assertion error, and here is our optional argument which says oops negative number, which comes from here. So here is a program for using the assert statement which runs with the same objective as we used for explaining raise statement, which is writing a program which uses assert statement to throw an assertion error. Here we have defined a function naming age checker which takes the argument of age, and here we are using our assert function or assert statement, and we are using age.isAlpha function here also. So we are using this not here because as we all know, if the age is alphabetic, this will return true, but the exception will be raised only if the expression returns false here. So we are using this not here so that if the alphabet is true, if this returns true also, we will get an result for false, and the exception will be raised. But if this is not the case, we will directly print the user's age. Here is the way I have put my input code, and here we are calling the our age checker function while providing the variable age. Let us try to run this code. If the user enters a string, we will get an assertion error which will say us inappropriate value of error, which we have provided here. But if it's not the case, if the user writes an number, they will get this message. So guys, this was it for this video. We will cover next topics in the next video. Thank you. Keep programming.